I can change careers.
I can make a difference.
Federal Student Aid, proud sponsor of the American Mind. Learn more about money for college at studentaid.gov.
91.3 FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere.
We were going to get and the fact behind these, you can join our discussion. We really hope that you will. Norm MacArthur, how you doing, Norm?
Doing
from out there in the world. We know what's going on. We feel that sucking sound. That's the money leaving our pockets going to Norm MacArthur.
Ain't making too much, mister. I'm doing all right. Thank you, mister.
And of course, our first in the 21st century, Willie H., who's able to do the live streaming of the program. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan here.
So I want to take on something. We've been sort of picking around edges over the past few weeks because of what's been going on with the impending indictment of former President Donald Trump. We've been picking around the edges of what really is going on here, and I just want to take this program to lean in on what I think is the fundamental health. You know, if you don't care, poem that was created by this priest in Germany, and said that a day came when they came, for homosexuals, and I wasn't a homosexual, so I didn't react. Homosexuals gone. Then a day came when they came for the gypsies, but I wasn't a gypsy. So they came and got the gypsy, and I moved on. Another day came and they said, we don't have a lot of use for these handicapped people. It's just too limited to get rid of these folks. So they came to move on to handicapped people. I didn't even have any friends that were handicapped. So I reacted. Catholics. But I wasn't that worried about
Uh-oh.
And they came for me. So I ran outside going to get my friends to get me. Right? I need some backup. Republicans have mounted a sort of kind of strategy, appealing to the base instincts of people. The base instincts of people are the instincts that you saw in the schoolyard when we were kids. Whoever was the weakest, whoever had the fewest crew, whoever was the slowest, whoever was, not the strongest, whoever seemed like they were the outsider, the shy person, the one that's off, on their own, they were the ones that got picked on in the schoolyard first. I remember I had a fight over a guy, his first name was Delmar. He was one of these kids that had polio. And you don't but 3 kids. Some was it was profoundly in just fight. We don't know anything about this. See you over on Alabama. It's like the 3 o'clock dance, right? And we had to rumble, and it had to get ugly, because I just couldn't put up with the fact that you would be playing on a dude who's my classmate. You're gonna play on him just because he's soft? That's your issue? That wasn't gonna happen.
Yep.
But we have to have that kind of instinct regenerated amongst us as a community of people, so that folks like what the Republicans are doing, saying, well, these people are minorities. Do you know what minority means? Minority means that we're the majority and they're the minority. And we can use democracy to take away everything these minority people have and leave them with nothing other than just saying, Massa, what you want from me today, Massa?
Yep.
I need you, Massa. That's what they really want, from the minority. So I want to take today's program and I want to kind of delve a little bit into this. I know it took a little bit longer in my introduction, but essentially the first soundbite that I was going to do for you, and I hope that James Braun, our producer, has a chance to chime in on this if he's listening to the program, is wherever the GOP gains a majority in both houses of a state's legislature, it immediately invokes an aggressive gerrymandering and anti-democracy regime. Immediately. I went to an article written by Ronald Brownstein, which was entitled, Watch What's Happening in Red States. In states where Republicans control the legislature, American life is rapidly changing. This was written in Atlantic Magazine on June 3rd of 2021. He said, it's not just about voting rights. Through this year's proliferation of bills restricting ballot access, I'm doing okay on time, ballot access in red states has commanded national attention. It really represents just one stream in a torrent of conservative legislation poised to remake the country. GOP-controlled states, including Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, Arizona, Iowa, and Montana, have advanced their most conservative agenda in years, and one that reflects Donald Trump's present stamp on the Republican Party. Now, of course, this was written when Donald Trump was still in his last year of his presidency, so it has that flavor. But he says, across the states and these states and others, Republican legislators and governors have operated as if they were programming a primetime lineup at Fox News. They have focused far less on small government, limited spending, and anti-tax policies, which used to be the mantra in the Republican Party. In fact, 10 years ago, you would have the Republican Party saying, let's not bother with those social issues. Let's not bother with that abortion stuff right now. That's not our big issue. Tax cuts, that's our big issue, right? Making sure that we can make America safe for the people that have money to keep their money and get more money. That's what the Republican Party was focused on. But it's changed. So the hot button issues that the GOP is focused on now are issues like abortion rights, women's rights to be able to control what happens to their own bodies, gun rights, limits on public protest, and they reflect the cultural and racial priorities of the Republican base. I'm going to come back to that racial priorities piece in just a minute. In part, this sharp turn reflects a conscious backlash against unified Democratic control of Congress and the White House. I need you to understand what I mean by that. A time came when we had Democratic control of both the Senate and the House of Representatives, and in addition to that, we had control of the White House. That happened in the 2000. When was Obama was 2008 to 2012. So this would have been. Now I don't think Obama had Democratic control of both houses. So who's the only one who's had control of both houses since that time has been Joe Biden. And as that has occurred, when the Republicans saw that the Biden presidency was going to be supported by a democratically controlled House and a democratically controlled Senate, whoever funds the Republican Party sat down with their principals, who are the sort of controllers of the Republican Party, but the people that provide the money, the Adelsons and so on, the Cook brothers and whatnot, that provide the money, they sat down with their Republican leadership and they say, listen, we got to get busy. We're not understanding what's going on here. The Democrats have gotten control of both houses of the legislature, and they control the White House. That means they can do whatever they want by consensus, and you can't stop them. So how do we fix this? So people said, well, what's your idea? The idea was, let's focus on the state level races. If we focus on the state level races, we can win congressional seats. When we win congressional seats, then state legislatures are the ones who design what the district lines are. We can go back because the censuses last for 10 years. So the last time they did a census was in 2010. If we win in 2018 and 2020, we would be in a position to control but the district lines. Gerrymandering is what they did, but they would be able to control the district lines, where the lines are drawn. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you have a district that has 100 people in it, and you divide that district up into 10 congressional districts with 10 votes apiece, and there are 60 Democrats in that 100 base population in that district. If you take those, so each district should have 10 people in it. If you take those districts and you break them up so that the Democrats are spread out evenly, or not evenly, but bulked into a few districts. You take 3 districts and make them 100% Democrats. That takes 30 of the 60 Democrats off the table, but you'd only be able to win 3 or 7 of those seats. You take 3 more seats and put the other Democrats in those other 3 seats, and you wind up being able to increase the number of seats that are held by Republicans by packing all of the Democrats into one district or 2 districts or 3 districts. Whatever you can do to crunch the Democrats into the smallest number of districts means that you have the greatest possibility of winning the districts outside of those jam-packed Democratic districts. You have a chance of winning all of those seats. We'll talk about some examples of this in North Carolina in just a minute. My point in saying this to you is that this is a conscious decision. This is not something that happened as a result of, winds of change that were going on, within the population, and people just voted for more Republicans, that way. That's not the way it went down. What they did is they changed the makeup of who was in the congressional districts. They ensured that very few Democrats would be in districts where there was a Democratic majority. They tried to put you all into a very few districts, or they spread you out so that you were all in districts where there was less than a Democratic majority.
Just wondering, Mr. Hare, is there a counter for that?
There's no easy counter. In other words, the census comes up 10 years, period. The only thing that you could do is, see, there used to be something, Willie H. used to be, with this until he got, became a groove master, the nighttime DJ stuff and whatnot. And when he became a groove master, he didn't care about this stuff anymore. But the reality is that when you have the census dictate what the population is in a state, and then the state legislatures in those states get to draw what the new lines are based on those populations, all they have to focus on that is uniform is how many people are in each of those congressional districts.
Is this almost to say, when you kind of look around, just like Buffalo, per se, Buffalo, the highest percentage of blacks live in Buffalo.
Right.
And the outer lines, Cheektowaga and...
So that's a great example that you're giving, because in Buffalo, you notice that, I think other than the 143rd or 141st, I forgot which one, assembly district, none of the other assembly districts in Western New York has a Buffalo majority population. What they did is they have, wherever Hamburg is and Delavan, and Orchard Park, well, they took those districts and they combined them with a pie slice, out of Buffalo. So you had maybe 25% of that district is now Buffalo residents, and the rest of the people in that district are all suburban residents. And they did that all over the place.
They restructured so that
exactly
they can have the vote. Well, and I believe even people of color doing these states, we vote on the big presidential, but a lot of times we don't vote.
And this is one of the things that was talked about. I think it was MSNBC was talking about this last night, that when you look at the state level races,
right,
even in the same year, if it's a presidential race, you have state level races that are also being voted on in a presidential year. But if you look at the percentage of people that vote in the presidential race versus the percentage of people that vote in the state level races in the same year, in the same election, you'll find that about 10 or 15% fewer people cast a ballot for the state representatives than the people that cast a ballot for the presidency.
That's correct.
Even with this, and I'm finding this to be truly and oddly unfair, because when you really break it down, per capita, we are in the minority right off the top.
Right.
As far as the amount of people.
Right.
So when they break it down this way, this really limits our votes. And how
it used to be that if you go back to the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, you will see that there were congressional seats that were designed in a way where Buffalo had the majority of the votes in those congressional district areas. So if you looked at Buffalo as a pie, you'd see huge chunks of Buffalo go into the district that used to be Congressman Nowak's, district, or huge that go into LaFalce's, district, and so on. And these are older names for you guys.
Oh yeah, I
right?
remember those names.
But my point is that these were districts that were dominated by their city populations. But as the population of Buffalo dwindled and people moved from Buffalo, not away from Erie County, they just moved to someplace other than Buffalo in Erie County. And when that occurred, then the people that draw the congressional maps, that draw the maps for assembly districts and state senate districts, those people said, well, why are we giving Buffalo a lift? People have moved outside of Buffalo. Our voting strength should move outside of Buffalo too. And that's true. That is what should have occurred. But what was supposed to occur, and what the Voting Rights Act was trying to help make take place, is that populations that are related to each other should be able to have leverage at each level of government that they are affected by. So if you have 900,000 people, and there's roughly like 930,000 people live in Erie County, if you have that many people living in Erie County, but 600,000 of those people live in the suburbs, and only 300,000 of those people live inside the city of Buffalo, then you would expect that a third of your county legislators would be, Buffalo residents. That's not true. I think there's only one of our county legislators that are Buffalo residents. You would see this, in your congressional seats, that, a third of the congressional seats in the Erie County area would logically be seats that would be majority dominant city of Buffalo seats. But that's not the case. They basically restructured everything so that everything has a supermajority suburban population.
Let me just add and just ask you, doesn't this affects the national and statewide reforms that should be coming to us because of the way that it's sprinkled out? Now, if certain reforms that we might get, they would have all of the people that are in this centralized location, they would kind of fight for these reforms.
Well, what it is it weights how the votes will go in those new assembly districts, state senate districts, and congressional districts. It weights how those votes will go. So if you have a district that is largely rural and rural suburban, and only a little bit of city of Buffalo, those people's, what tends to be in those people's interest? You have to think about what their life is. Their life is a lot of land. They got land that used to be planted on. Many, if not most of them, are not planting on that land anymore because they're not getting enough money out of farming to make farming work for them. So they've got all this land that seems like it's wealth, but it's not really wealth because they can't do anything with it. They're just supporting having the land, but they're not able to do much economically with the land. So they're focused on those kinds of issues. But if you live on Life and Alexander Street in Buffalo, what I just talked about means nothing to you. You have no experience with that whatsoever. It's just completely dislocated, from your consciousness. So it's easy to see how people become separated in their minds from each other. If my reality is so different from your reality, right, that I don't experience your reality at all, and you don't experience my reality at all, we become like aliens to each other. And what the Republicans have been doing since 1965, is they've been doing everything in their power to help people focus on the things that alienate us from each other, as opposed to focusing on the things that make us in common with each other. And because we're focusing on the alienation versus the commonality, we end up with people doing predatory things to each other. The thing that's so strange about it, though, is the predatory things that Republicans do, to sort of support their sort of white supremacist, kind of orientation against what they consider to be this minority, emerging minority dominance, in the American population. The things that the Republicans are doing hurt the people in the white majority population. They're actually allowing things to take place that are injuring them. Give you an example. In 2022, President Biden, in his Build Back, Better initiative, was trying to get something done where you got a child care, say it right, an enhanced child care tax credit. We've had child care tax credits before, but it was an enhanced credit that would give you minimally $300 a month that you would have just because you had a child that was under the age of 18. And if you had a child who was under the age of 6, you got a little bit more, like $360 a month for that child. That amount of money may not seem like a lot to those of you that are making $2,000 a week,
right,
but for those of you that are making $400 or $500 a week,
huge.
Getting $300 of free money, well, I shouldn't call it free, it's our public money, but getting that subsidy from the body politic of America took people who were impoverished and made them no longer poor, made people able to buy milk and bread in the same week, made people able to get,
elevated us.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You give one of them cheap cars, Willie knows about this.
I
Them
know
little
my
cheap
block.
cars.
I saw it on my block. I saw it happen on my block, Mr. Hare.
You know exactly what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
right?
saw it happen.
You know, I mean, in my day, it was different. I could go, you know, wig over a half a year, pull together $560, and I could go to a shop and buy a car for $500. You know, spend $60 to put some wheels on the car, and I'm rocking it. Now the car would cost me money over the course of, you know, each month, because it, you know, a $500 car is a $500 car, so there's only so much utility you're going to get out of it. But over time, I was able to save enough money that a year and a half later, I went out and bought myself a Vega.
Right.
And I bought it new.
Right.
And I spent something like $2,400 on it, right? I know y'all know what a Vega is either. It was like a motorcycle with a body on it. You know, it was a really cheap car, right? But I was able to buy one. And then I was able to save money. A couple of years after that, I bought a Maverick, what I call them Bart Maverick, a Ford Maverick. Bought me a Bart Maverick. That car was a rough and tumble, you know, roll with him kind of car. I go through the mountains and whatnot with this car, you know, and so on. And it allowed me to go to expand the kind of jobs I was able to work. And because I was able to do that, my income began to grow significantly. My baby came along, and I was in the right space, you know, when that occurred. I had an Impala at one. I mean, oh gosh, it was not an Impala. It was a Chrysler LeBaron.
LeBaron.
I had a Chrysler LeBaron, you know, at one, because when my daughter came, I wanted her to experience living large.
Yes.
You know, so when she came in the world, she had cushiony seats, you know, and so on.
The comforts.
The comforts and so on, right? Well, I mean, that was it. I was planning for having a child, and I knew what I wanted to be able to put around my child, so I organized my life to be able to get that done. So anyway, as Democrats have had success in winning control or near control of both houses of Congress, Republicans have focused on gaining control of state legislatures. The GOP then seductively pushes for more and more states' rights, asserting that nothing less than national defense or international trade should be left to the federal government to decide. All those issues that are not what they consider to be federal issues, they should be decided by the states. So that means the states get to decide what your right to vote is in your state, what your right to property is in your state, what your right to control over your body is in your state, your right to evidence, you know, rules in your state, you know, everything they felt should be decided by the states. If you allow this to occur, and this is what is occurring right now, this is going on today, I just want you to understand that if you allow this to continue to occur, you will end up without the United States. You will have 50 disunited states. Every state will have its own rules. They've actually put legislation together in a couple of states. I'm not sure that Texas is one, and I forget the other one, but in a couple of states where you could be charged with trafficking if you help a person under the age of 18 to be able to go to another state to get an abortion. You could be charged with trafficking for that. They call it abortion trafficking. These are words that don't even make sense, right?
Just making up stuff.
They're just making up stuff, right? But they've actually passed a law in a couple of states already to do this. They have laws that say, excuse me, in Texas, if you help a woman figure out how to go about getting abortion, or even make a decision about whether or not to get an abortion, you could be charged with a felony. You could do 5 years. They have one state that wants to line you up for murder. If you coach a woman on how to get an abortion or whether or not to have an abortion, and you know she responds to whatever you say and makes a move to get an abortion, you could try not only that woman, you couldn't try her, but you could try the people that helped her. The person who drove the Uber to get her from wherever her house is to wherever she went to get the abortion, the Uber driver could be charged with a felony.
Mr. Hare, I am really now starting to kind of understand this. These statewide elections, are so important.
Right.
So important.
I mean, we really, I set up, and I'm thinking about this because I watch these judge shows and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and in these shows they say, oh, well, that's not the way it is in this state. That's not the way it is in this state,
Right.
and different things.
Exactly.
But
Right.
when you separate all of that kind of thing, and it's, I mean, it can wind up being all over the place. A different thing for this state, a different thing for this state.
Think about
I mean,
it.
It's crazy.
Think about it this way. The 13th Amendment says you cannot deny citizenship to somebody on the basis of race, color, creed, or country of origin. Now, it doesn't say you cannot deny citizenship to people in the state of Columbia, the District of Columbia, but you can deny it in other places. It doesn't say you can deny citizenship in Arizona, but you couldn't deny it in other places. It's a national right, right? Everybody has the same right.
Yeah.
It's not states' rights. It's the United States rights.
Exactly.
So if you have the right to determine what to do with your body, if it's your body, it's not the Commonwealth's body, it's your body individually.
Exactly.
You have the right to make the decisions about what to do with your body. How can that right be based on what is allowed in state 1 versus state 6? How can that make any sense?
It doesn't.
Either it's your right or it's not your right. If you allow anything that should be a national right to be turned into a state's rights, a state right, what you do is you change the character of what it means to be a citizen of the United States. Your citizenship rights mean nothing. The Civil Rights Act means nothing if states have the right to shape those rights in whatever way they choose, to even take away those rights if that's what they want to do. That should not be possible to do in the United States, but that is what is being, and it's not only being done, but your media is co-signing it. They're sitting here and having discussions like this is in the mainstream of American thought. These are, sort of legitimate conversations that people are having. These aren't legitimate conversations. They're not legitimate, excuse me, they're not legitimate opinions. You can't have a legitimate opinion that says you have the right to go into my pocket and take money out of my pocket and put it into your pocket. That's not a legitimate discussion. That's theft. That's robbery. Okay, that's violence against my person. You don't have the right to commit violence against my person.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So if you don't have the right to do that, you don't have the right to take away from me a right that the Constitution of the United States gives me.
It's a choice that's only yours and yours
It's
alone.
my choice.
Yeah.
I choose whether or not to vote.
Yeah.
I choose whether or not to have an abortion. I choose whether or not, well, I don't choose to rob people because we should not be robbing people, period, right?
Right.
And so on. But all of the rights that we have as American citizens, they're etched into you. They're amalgamated into your being. They are your rights. They're not somebody else's rights. Nobody has a right to take those. Now how you wield those rights may be different in different states, right? Because the demographics, the logistics in different states are different. So I might say in my state, there should be a polling place within 2 blocks of wherever you are. But that's fine if you live in Buffalo. But if you live in Salamanca, that might not be that easy, right? So you can have different rules on how you access those rights.
Yeah.
But the rules should be the same, across the state, and they should be focused on helping to ensure that you are able to access your rights under the circumstances that exist in your geography. Listen, we got to take a quick break.
Wow.
So if y'all stick with us, we will see you on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM. WBNY. See you then.
They are our love bugs and companions. They are our pets, our family, and they make life better. When we face unexpected challenges, so do our pets. That's why we're on a mission to support people and their pets. Whether donating a bag of kibble, sharing an Instagram post of a lost cat, or welcoming a foster pet into your home, every bit of kindness counts. Visit petsandpeopletogether.org to learn how to be a helper in your community. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
91.3 FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM, WBNY, Buffalo.
All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan here, your host. We're here with Nora McCarter, who is our in-studio audience of one. And we're here with Willie H., who is our 21st century citizen who knows how to enable us to be able to do these programs with live streaming. Welcome both of you back.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So I just want to pick up a little bit on the thought that I was sharing with you. Essentially, the Republican Party is effectually achieving the post-Civil War goals of the secessionist Southern states to have America shaped in their image versus the image of the multicultural democracy a majority of Americans believe the country should be shaped in. That's what's really going on right now. As they start going back to the states' rights stuff means that they can go back to what they did in 1865. At the end of the Civil War, the Southern secessionists were readmitted as citizens, even though they were still secessionists, but they were admitted as citizens of the United States. They passed laws in their state legislatures that said that black people couldn't vote. So they're citizens. What do you mean they can't vote? We say they can't vote. This is our state. It's states' rights. In our state, you don't have any rights that we don't give you, so you can't vote. You can't sign a contract. Wow. You can't own property. All this kind of thing that were being done. So then amendments were passed to the Constitution. The next amendment after the abolition, supposedly, of slavery, which was not really abolished in the Constitution. That's another issue. But the citizenship, the 14th Amendment says that you cannot deny citizenship to someone on the basis of race, color, creed, or country of origin. Excuse me, I've been trying to fight this cold off over the weekend. Or country of origin. So that's citizenship. Everything that a citizen has a right to, you immediately had rights to it because your citizenship was not established based on some kind of a contract or a compact or some kind of an agreement. Your citizenship was actually attached to the definition. Your rights as a citizen were attached to your definition of being a citizen of the United States. If you were an American citizen, the right to travel, the right to free speech, the right to practice your religion where you want to practice your religion, your right to be free of unlawful search and seizure, your right to appear on a jury, all the things that citizens have the right to do, you got them because you are a citizen. Right. It wouldn't matter whether you were a citizen in Georgia or you were a citizen in Oregon. It wouldn't matter. Your citizenship, it contains these rights.
Mr. Hare, so basically, breaking this down, you're saying we might or could be in jeopardy if things keep going the way they're going of losing plenty.
No, you are not hearing me. You're not hearing me. You are already
losing.
Already
this
losing these
rights. This is already
rights.
going on right now. They already have laws that say that you could put a person in jail because you drove a person up to the border of another state, and that person then got out of the car and crossed the border to another state. And that's somebody who doesn't recognize the fact that I'm on the radio right now. Don't worry about that. But those laws are on the books right now. They took away this mifepristone, whatever you call this drug, that people have been using as a complement to a two-drug regimen to be able to eliminate a pregnancy. They took one of those drugs away. A judge did this just a couple of days ago, right? Now, he did this on the basis that the Food and Drug Administration 23 years ago approved this drug, and this judge says, well, I don't think the way that FDA did that 23 years ago was the right way. I don't agree with the approach that they used to approve this drug, so I'm disapproving the drug. That's like coming back. Now, we've been doing remediation of COVID-19 for 3 years now, right?
Yeah.
What if somebody came back to you and said that the COVID-19 vaccine is no longer approved because you didn't talk to somebody, with a smile on your face, when you did the presentation on your evidence that this was an effective drug, or whatever your basis was, for doing this? What if somebody told you that today on something that you've been doing since basically April of 2020? December of 2020, you've been doing this regimen of vaccine. Mm-hmm. What if somebody told you today that don't work anymore? We don't accept that. We're withdrawing the FDA approval after you already got hundreds of millions of people that have already had this stuff placed in them. Wow. And so on, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. But that's what this judge is doing. Now, he's doing this because he sees it as a way to prevent people from being able to terminate pregnancies. And his goal is to terminate the pregnancy. His goal has nothing to do with whether or not you have a right to make a decision about what you want to do with your body. His goal is to ensure that his perceived right to decide whether or not you have a right. Now, he's not even talking about his rights. We're not talking about him saying what he would do himself. Does he have a law that he wants to be passed that would regulate his behavior? He's not talking about that. He wants a law to be created to regulate your behavior. Now, you got to have a problem with that. If people are passing laws to regulate your behavior, and the behavior that you are engaged in is behavior that has been accepted in the United States for a long time that does not injure other people, it is behavior that is centered just on you. In other words, when I was 5 years old, I started smoking. I know it's a little bit crazy. It's a long story, but I started smoking when I was 5 years old. I stopped smoking in my 25th year of smoking. I was 29 years old. I told my general physician that I have been smoking for 25 years. He thought I was absolutely insane. So that's physically not possible, right? Trust me, some things are physically possible that may not seem like they're possible. But the point is that I was making a decision about something I was doing with me. You couldn't pass a law other than having a parental law saying that Nate should not be allowed to smoke until he gets to be such and such an age. In those days, it was 21. So I was doing illegal stuff, for 16 years until I got old enough. But the point I'm making is you can pass a law that regulates my behavior, but for me to pass a law to regulate your behavior, it has to be a behavior that you're engaged in that is injuring other people. Your decision to have or not have a child does not injure other people. But this judge says that the fetus is a whole person. He referred to the fetus as an unborn human being. I'm contending to you that if that's a decision that you're making, you need to have a federal, a dialogue and have a law put before the Congress that defines what a human being is. You can't have every state have their own definition of what a human being is. So that if you're in New York State, a fetus is not a human being until it turns into a baby outside the womb, walking, cut the cord, and all that stuff. Or in his state, you smelled like you wanted to have a baby, so that made it a baby, and so on.
That's what I was talking about earlier. It seems like these laws that they're trying to, they kind of contradict themselves. I mean, it would seem if you're going to, everything should be uniform. You can't have a law like this.
Well, that's
certain states this way and certain states this way.
That is the core, right? That if it is a citizen right, your right as a citizen, it has to be the same right in every state in the country.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
It can't be that I'm an American citizen, Houston. I'm an American citizen, Pensacola, Florida. It can't be like that. It has to be the same American citizenship.
Right.
So if you're going to argue, this judge is going to argue that a human being, a fetus is a human being when it becomes a two-celled organism, that at that point it becomes a human being. If you're going to argue that, that argument has to be taken to the Supreme Court. You need to turn that into a law and have that law tested before the Supreme Court on the constitutionality of that determination. Here's why this is important. When I talk about the issue of aborting a child, and I personally don't believe in abortion, just so we're clear.
Yeah.
If it's up to me, we all just keep our kids. And if you're the father of the child, you got to put your money on the table. You got to put the time in. Your family has to be involved in rearing the child, and so on. That's the way I look at it. But the decision about whether or not you are a human being versus not a human being, on whether you're a two-cell, creature, or whether you're a fully formed baby, that decision is a religious decision right now. That's a religious determination. It's not a scientific determination, because you don't have any science that can tell you whether or not a baby is conscious.
What are they saying that it's not a human being until the zygote fertilizes the egg? Is that what they're speaking on?
No. What they're saying, what some people believe is that when the zygote fertilizes the egg, when that occurs, that fertilized egg is a human being.
So at that point,
right? That's what this judge in Texas, believes. But a whole lot of other people in the United States, something like 63% of the people in the United States, believe that a baby is not a human being until it comes out of the womb and it presents itself to the world.
But
when it's born,
it's breathing. I mean, it's on its mother's. You know what I mean? It's living. It's growing.
I get you. I'm just telling you that different people have different views. Some people may say, well, when the baby reaches the second trimester, at whatever that is, 15 weeks or something. You figure it's 39 weeks for gestation. So the first trimester would be something like 13 to 14 weeks. So if you're talking about a fetus at 13 to 14 weeks, some people feel that it's not a fully formed human being until that stage. Some feel it's later than that. Some feel it's earlier than that. The point I'm making is that if you're going to build a law on the basis of something being human, you have to have a common definition of what being human actually is. And that needs to be in the law. That can't be, Judge Kaczmarek, just having a stogie one day, on the back porch, of his cabin and saying, I feel like a baby today. I know. I smelled like sex. That sounded like a baby to me. That just doesn't make any sense. Right? So my point is that if we're going to go down that road, then go all the way down the road. Make it uniform. Say that in this country, based on this decision, amend the Constitution, so the Constitution says this, that once a baby reaches this stage, whatever stage that is, 2 cells, 14 cells, 1 billion cells, whatever it is you say, it is, you come to a decision that we vote on as a country and accept this is the standard that we operate on, and then move forward that way so we don't have stupid conversations. To me, it's a stupid conversation to say that in Texas, a baby is a baby when the egg smells a zygote, and over here, a baby's not a baby until it can talk. That doesn't make any sense. We have to have a uniform standard of what humanity actually is. So Jessica Anderson, who's the executive director of the Heritage Action for America, part of the Heritage Foundation, asserts that states that she stated that right-leaning voters have shifted more of their effort toward red states because they realize that they currently have no chance of advancing their causes at the national level. But she added, this push also reflects a determination to elevate social and cultural issues that Trump has stressed. Now, the reason why Trump has pushed on social and cultural issues, my view, is that Trump doesn't know enough about anything other than social and cultural issues to be able to express any thought about it at all. He is such an unread person, or at least from what we can see on the record, he appears to be a wholly unread person. He doesn't research. He doesn't think. He doesn't, pull together different analyses. He doesn't pull experts together, and work out thought processes about what he thinks we should do on this issue or that issue. He doesn't do any of that stuff. What he does is he rallies people around things that they have social issues with. So you have white people who feel that, well, I know that we did these terrible things to black people, but I wasn't the one who did it. That was my great uncle or his cousin, who owned slaves. That had nothing to do with me. I never called anybody the N-word. I never did this. They go down that road. And when they do that, they feel like what's been done to remediate some of the things that have been done to African and Hispanic people in this country, that's unjust because it's taking something away from them. The fact that they were able to have 100% access to all of the jobs, all of the loans, all of the property transactions, and so on in this country, and that when they finally started, treating African and Hispanic people fairly, so that you got, your share of those opportunities to own land, to get a job, to start a business, get a commercial loan, et cetera, they feel like that's taking something away from them. Mm-hmm. And they don't feel like the history of taking something away from you for all of these hundreds of years, well, that's okay. That's what those people did. That was back then. We're not doing that today. Now we're just doing merit. We're just doing a meritocracy. The reality is, if you start a race a mile ahead of everybody else in the race, and it's a 2-mile race, you got to run twice as fast if you're at the beginning of the race as the person who started that race already a mile ahead. That's just not fair. And of course, you're not going to have fair outcomes in a race that's stacked up to be unfair from the get-go. That's what the Republicans are doing. They're stacking the deck.
Right.
And it used to be that there were sort of norms that were established in this country about how we operate as a democracy. So in the Senate, for example, you didn't used to have arguments on the floor of the Senate because the Senate was considered to be an austere, kind of a place. And everybody was gentlemanly, or whatever the word gentlemanly means if you're a woman. But it was that kind of atmosphere, that aura. It wasn't in the law. It was just the custom, the way that things were done in the Senate. We don't have it anymore. Now people want to hit each other in the face, excuse me, in the Senate. House of Representatives, it's like a rodeo show. It's like the Wild Wild West, over there. So the customs, when an administration ends, it's usually an election takes place on the first Tuesday in November of a presidential year, but the inauguration doesn't take place until January 20th of the following year. During that virtual 2-month, 3-month period in between, the person who was in the regime that lost or is leaving because they're at the end of their second term, that person is responsible for continuing to run the government effectively and helping the next administration get all of the information they can possibly get about what's been going on so that they could start their administration as wired up as they can possibly be about the challenges and circumstances that the country is facing, at that point. That used to be the way things were done. Mm-hmm. When Trump lost, he's still saying that he didn't lose the race. So he still hasn't gone through the process of transitioning from his administration in 2000. In 2007, or 2020, he still hasn't gone through the process of transitioning that administration to the administration of Joe Biden. As a result of that, when the Afghan treaty with Afghanistan was signed between Trump, remember that, between Trump and the leadership of the Taliban in Afghanistan, that was done in the late spring of 2020. it was effective May 1st of 2021. When the Biden administration came in January 20th of 2021, one of the things that was in front of them was the treaty that had been signed between the Taliban and the United States by Donald Trump. The treaty that said that the United States was supposed to leave Afghanistan on May 1. So the Taliban had every right to be sitting on the perch waiting on May 1 to show up, and that all of the Americans were going to be gone at that point because that's the treaty that we signed. Biden was able to work out a delay in the start of that withdrawal to September 1 of 2021. He was able to work that out, working with people that he didn't have a relationship with. He was able to work that out. What did the American media do? Well, why didn't Biden do more advanced planning? Why didn't he, fix everything so that it would be smooth, in the transition between the whatever the Afghan government was and the Taliban to make that transition as smooth as possible? Why didn't he do all of that? We didn't do it because the kind of things needed to be done before that were not done by Donald Trump. He didn't do any, if he had done any planning at all and organizing what the withdrawal strategy was going to be, he didn't share it with the Biden administration. So the Biden administration had to first meet these people, work out relations with these people who didn't like the United States, didn't trust the United States, weren't interested in doing any new deals with the United States. Excuse me. They had to work all of this stuff out on the fly. That's why that was so raggedy, at that time. But here's what they never tell you. Over 120,000 people were evacuated from Afghanistan in that period between roughly the middle part of August to the end of 2021. More than 120,000 people were evacuated from Afghanistan. I thought that was a pretty big deal.
Yeah. I was, I just sitting here listening to you and everything. There's just such a huge difference in when Trump, he had control and he was president, and when President Biden has diplomacy, and he's, it's just the way he handles things, completely different than President Trump. You know what I mean? It's just night and day.
And the thing that I'm trying to get us to understand is the Republicans are okay with the Trump administration being so reticent to turn over the keys, to the kingdom to the Biden administration, which every Democratic president has done without, and every Republican president had done without error, without exception, since the beginning of the country. Every single administration has done the same thing. When the Trump administration chose not to do this, you would think that the Republican Party would have attacked Trump and said, you can't do this. This is the United States.
Right.
The election was run, you lost, he won, turn over the keys, give him all of your staff, let them meet the new department with your departments, and make the transitions as smooth as possible, because the next president has the right to rule, has the right to have control over the processes of government, just as you had it when you were in control of the processes of government. That has to be the way it goes in order for us to continue to be a coherent country. But that's not what President Trump, or former President Trump, has done. And as a consequence, things became disconnected that should not have been disconnected. Things that should have transitioned smoothly did not transition so smoothly, and so on. So that's the point that I'm trying to make. I've gotten so far away from my points. But in North Carolina, just to give you an example about this gerrymandering thing, Republicans have drawn a new congressional map that gives them a lock on at least 10 of the state's 14 congressional seats. It's a staggering advantage in a state that reelected a Democratic governor in 2020, where Joe Biden got 48.6% of the vote statewide. How in the world can you get almost 49% of the vote, but you only get 4 out of 14 of the congressional seats. How is that possible? Gerrymandering is how that's possible. Okay, so listen, there's so much that I needed to share with us. You know, a decade ago, Republicans launched a hugely successful effort called Project Red Map to take control of state legislatures, and then they used their new majorities to draw maps that locked in their advantages for a decade. That's what we were talking about before, Norm.
Yeah.
And so the Republicans had the power to draw new lines in 187 congressional districts, while the Democrats had power in only 75, according to the Cook Political Report. The fact that Democrats came within 4 congressional races to win a majority in the House is a remarkable achievement, given how much cheating the Republicans have done.
In itself, yeah.
Excuse me. So we'll talk about more of this. I didn't get as much into it as I had intended to, but I think you got the flavor of what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
So stay tuned. We got a lot more that's going to be in front of us. We look forward to talking to you all on Wednesday here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY. See you all then.
Till you